You know, kick your heart out. Oh, like, that's what you did.
Means everyone will take mine. All right, this public meeting of the Philadelphia Board of Pensions and Retirement is being conducted in person, Board's conference room, at the Board's offices on the 16th floor of Cheat County Center, pursuant to section 21-1503 of the Philadelphia Code. Electronic recordings of this meeting will be made through Microsoft Teams conference technology and by an audio recording. An electronic recording will be made available to the public online on the Board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at such meeting. Our first order of business is a motion to adopt the rules of order that the board has approved and used for our in-person public meetings that are electronically recorded. The purpose is to help ensure that accurate and complete audio or audiovisual recordings of the meeting occurred, comply with the code requirements. The motion to adopt procedures for the meeting have been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian? Audrey?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. We note that Mike Sicagni is not attending, and Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries to 0. Item 2, a motion to approve the minutes from our August meeting was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Abstain.
Carolyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 6-0 with 1 noted extension. Item 3, motion to approve the 122 pension application and 74 withdrawal applications was made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approved. Isabel?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol. Motion carries unanimously. Section 4. 4A, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Sylvester Bell was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4A?
Make a motion to extend it to the hearing panel, please.
Send 4A to a hearing panel. Is there a second to the revised motion?
Second.
Noted Paul. A revised motion was made to send case 4A to a hearing panel. Any discussion on the revised motion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Approve.
Carolyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol.
Approve.
The revised motion carries unanimously. Case 4B, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Raymond Group was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4B? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Deny.
Sherilyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 6-1. Case 4C, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Beverly Duncan was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4C? Hearing none. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. 4D, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Jennifer Colombo was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4D? Hearing none. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approved. Isabel?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea? Approved. And Carol. The motion carries unanimously. Case 4E, motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Matthew Smythe was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4E? Go to the roll. Brian?
Approve.
Aubrey? Sherilyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
Andrea approved, and Carol. The motion carries unanimously. Case 4F, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Virginia Folio was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4F? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian,
I'll abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn. Deny. Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea. Deny. And Carol.
Abstain.
Jim is nominated. The motion was 0-3 with 4 abstentions and the motion fails. 4G, motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Frederick Hammond.
But wait a minute, wait, the motion failed? The motion was
To approve for 4F. And there were no votes to approve. There were 3 votes to deny, and there were 4 votes to abstain, which are not under Robert's rules counted. And
all right,
does that make sense, Carol? For case 4F.
I'll come back and really look at it. It's not making it right now, but
Okay. Case 4G, motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Frederick Hammond was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4G? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey,
Approve.
Sherilyn. Approved. Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea approved, and Carol.
approved.
Motion carries unanimously. 4H. A motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Mark McCaston was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4H? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian,
I'll abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn. Denied. Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea. Denied. And Carol. For 4H. Motion fails 0-3 with 4 abstentions. 4I, motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Wade Loman was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4I? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I'll abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn. Deny. Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea. Deny. And Carol.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-4. I'm sorry, 0-3 with 4 abstentions. 4J, a motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Patrick Morales was made and seconded. Any discussions on case 4J? We'll go to the roll call. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Carolyn. Denied. Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul,
I approve.
Andrea approved, and Carol.
Approved.
The motion carries 5-2. 4K, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Angela Pena was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4K? Go to the roll. Brian,
I'll abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn. Denied. Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea. Denied. And Carol.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-3 with 4 voted abstentions. Case 4L, motion to approve the service connected disability benefits for Michael Weems was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 4L? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I'll abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn. Denied. Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea. Denied. Well, no, that Mike just joined us and we were taking the votes for case 4L
Me.
for Michael Weems.
Jackie, because Amy, don't give me the vote again.
Sure. So motion to approve service connected disability benefits for Michael Weems was made and seconded. Any discussion?
We'll start with the next.
Yeah, sorry, just repeat.
Okay. So we have Brian,
Whoa. So
So that he hears what each one vote was, on this, motion.
I think you gotta bring Mike in after this vote. I don't think Mike can come in on the vote. He just walked in the room, he's not even entering the meeting as, I mean, what she did, but. Go ahead.
Jim, for compliance purposes, would you like me to redo the?
So for Robert rules of order purpose, Mike just came into the room in the middle of the vote, so he can't take the vote because he's not present at the meeting. But I'm just making that for the record.
Okay, so.
Not that, I just want to let you know that too.
So you can appeal, you can appeal with Jackie's ruling.
I'm not gonna read the whole, I'm just stating what I have to say, that's all I'm saying, but go ahead.
Brian, may I have you vote on case 4L?
For L, I is still abstaining.
Okay. Aubrey,
Denied.
No, change.
Sherilyn, Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andre, denied, Mike,
Denied.
and Carol.
Saying,
The motion fails 0-4 with 4 noted abstentions. That moves us into section 5 and case 5A, a motion to approve the administrative application for service-connected disability benefits regarding Barry Edward was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 5A? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
Abstain.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn, denied, Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andre, denied, Mike,
Denied.
Carol.
saying,
Motion fails 0-4 with 4 abstentions. Moves us to section 6, in case 6A, a motion to approve the service-connected death benefits regarding Jeffrey D. Domenico was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 6A? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn, denied, Roosevelt,
I approve.
Paul,
I approve.
Andrea, approved. Mike
Denied.
and Carol.
approve,
Motion carries 5-3. Case 6B, a motion to approve the service-connected death benefits regarding William English was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 6B?
Clarify this, medical only, I believe.
right,
That's what it's, that's all we do.
Thank you, Brian.
There will be the benefit in lieu of the service connected death provider, in order to get the medical, at least has to be made on the service connected.
I approve.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn, denied, Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, approved, Mike,
Denied.
and Carol.
mm,
The motion carries 5-3. Old business and case 7A, motion to approve the service-connected death benefits for John Flood was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 7A? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn, denied, Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul,
Approve.
Andre, approved, Mike,
Denied.
Carol, approved. Motion carries 5-3. 7B, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Tiana Kenner was made and seconded. Any discussion on case 7B? Hearing none. Brian, I'm sorry.
Denied.
Okay. Aubrey,
Denied.
Sherilyn, denied, Roosevelt,
Abstain.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea, denied, Mike,
Denied.
and Carol.
saying,
The motion fails 0-5 with 3 noted abstentions. Case 7C, a motion to approve the withdrawal of pension contributions in lieu of selecting survivorship option 4 for Vernon Mears. It's made and seconded. Any discussion on case 7C? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey,
Approve.
Sherilyn, approved, Roosevelt,
Approve.
Paul,
I approve.
Andre, approved, Mike,
Approve.
Carol. Motion carries unanimously, brings us into new business and executive.
One Friday, so settle case 4A in Central Dairy Pound, because the large number of police that have had in recent months, that's resulted in a decent number of administrative claims. So, given the number of appeals, there are a greater number of administrative appeals. We appreciate all of you taking the time out of your schedules to participate in the hearing. We ask that you continue your flexibility and willingness to assist in keeping the process moving for the members. We don't want to have them wait longer than necessary. So if you're notified, please try to respond to Elizabeth. We're currently actually trying to schedule November. We're going to have two responses. So even if you can't do it, just respond so we know for sure. And that includes any designees who are not here. We really, given the amount of ability to do it, you're all hands on deck. So we appreciate your cooperation there. Right now, we're in the midst of our annual audit, our accumulation of actuarial data and reviewing of actuarial data. The state audit is getting underway soon, and we're completing the deferred compensation audit. That's working. So a little busy on the audit side of things. We had a small issue in the first couple paychecks of this fiscal year with the pension contributions for a small group of Wi-Fi employees. Every Wi-Fi employees who were here prior to Plan 10. So prior to Plan 10, you didn't have to opt out of Plan 10. Once Plan 10 came around, the new hires who were Y employees had to opt out of Plan 10, paid an additional 1% of their contribution. That's just general rule. That additional 1% was inadvertently applied to certain Wi-Fi employees. Some of whom might be here at the stadium, such as Chris, myself, Jim, Jackie, some other people. So at any rate, that was only for 3 pay periods. It's going to be reimbursed to those folks in the next few paychecks. So we just want to let you know about that. It's not a large number of people. In fact, nobody noticed it. We actually noticed it internally. It was a small amount of money. The average amount was like $51. So that will be reimbursed to those folks. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Frank. Any new business before the board? Brings us to the litigation summary and the updates. Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded, and hearing no objections, motion carries unanimously. We'll move into deferred compensation.
No. I'm ready to go close. Yeah. So he got two.
We was definitely. Look at that.
All right.
We are.
Item 1 for deferred comp, motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. That motion was made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call. Brian. You approve?
I approve.
The statement like we don't start. Aubrey. Second. Sherilyn. Approve. Roosevelt. Paul.
Approve.
Andrea. Approve. Mike.
Approve.
And Carol. Motion carries unanimously. This is agenda item 2. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
As of August 31st, deferred compensation ending balance was $1,770,112,421. That's about 1% decrease in comparison to the month of July. Total participants with account balances is 25,353. That is 16 less than the previous month. Actively deferring is 19,647, which is about 7 less than the month of July. When you look at the active penetration rate in comparison to those that have an account balance, it's about 77% participants are actively contributing to the plan. Number of new enrollments in August was 110. Year to date, Brad and his team are doing an incredible job reaching out to all different departments, shifts, locations. We are now, as of August, it's 1,274 new enrollments received. So thank you, Pat and team, and also to the trustees for your support, continued support with your members. Inactive participant is 5,706, which is 9 less than the previous month. Philadelphia Parking Authority, there are 530 participants for new enrollments received in the month of August. Philadelphia Housing Development, total participants 42, 0 enrollments received in the month of August. The 401A plan, we did receive the annual match on August 4th. So the assets have increased as well as the participant count. At the end of August, it's 3,054,933 with 1,042 participants. That's 109 more than the previous month. Call volume is 3,498. Did receive an increase in the month of August by 236 more calls than July. Online account continue to increase, which is a great sign because that's when the participants can leverage all the resources and education tools that are out there. There are now 19,234 participants. That's about 75% of the participants that have an account balance have set up an online account. Percentage option in August, it's 1,875, which is 10 more than the previous month. And Roth, which is the after-tax contributions, there are 6,120 participants as of August, which is an increase of 96 participants in the month of July at 45,700,000. Just want to give a quick update before I pass it on to Brad. Again, thank you so much to the trustees for your approval regarding the marketing campaigns. The first campaign has already been launched, which is the risk tolerance campaign. This is a campaign email that was sent out to everyone that's 100% invested in the fixed account, to mid-career savers as well as to those that are late career savers. We will also send out a postcard, which is going to be mailed out to everyone that is 100% penetration. That will go out in October. And then the percentage campaign, we're raising the awareness of the value of moving from dollar to percentage. That's going to be at the end of October, beginning.
Thank you, Dana. Since Dana was talking about the marketing campaign, I'm going to go right into, there was some data requested from the landlords about the number of folks that are in Plan 16 that are not getting a match. Also, folks. So thanks to Bill and the One Philly folks. There's 858 employees that are in Plan 16 that are eligible to receive a match that are not contributing to the 457 plan. And then there are 383 members of Plan 10 that are eligible for a match that are not contributing to the 457 plan. And that is our third marketing campaign that was approved by the board a couple months ago, to reach out to those folks via email, and anybody that doesn't have an email with a mailing to show them the benefit of contributing to get that match with the city. So on to the local team activity report. The month of August, generally a pretty slow month with vacations and such, but we had 98 one-on-one consultations conducted by the local team. Those resulted in 27 in-person enrollments with the team. 17 of those consultations were conducted using the My Interactive Retirement Planner tool. During the month of August, we did 18 group events and workshops. And total attendees for those were 751. Increased dramatically by the retirement seminar put on by the pension folks. Thank you, and Shamika for inviting us to be a part of that. But that was almost 300 attendees for that one.
I just had a quick question. I will make sure I understood what you said. The first advertising email you sent out, you sent to those who were 100% in the fixed account?
This
Is that what you said?
yes, yeah.
And what was the idea behind it?
That was the ask from the board trustees at the time of if someone is young, they have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio. This would be an opportunity for them to not only review their asset allocation, make sure it's appropriate for their time frame, risk tolerance, but also to sit down with the retirement specialist.
So to try to earn money, fixed account.
It's up to the individual, but to raise awareness, especially for those that are 25, 35.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Nationwide on the equity reports? Great, thank you. That moves us into item 3, which was tabled at our last meeting. And we have some materials in front of us. I'd like to ask if there's any discussion from board members.
So where's the material? Is this the material? Yeah.
Yes, the spiral bound marketing update. Binder.
Mike, just kind of touch parallel, if you don't mind. Remember a couple of years back, we had hit the brakes on a similar tool because of the third party Merkle. Merkle might ring a bell. This is, jump into it. This is a similar tool that you brought in-house, proprietary, of eliminating the third party concern we had. But moving on the subcommittee, I don't know, move ahead with something that we had problems with a few years ago that you could. So that's,
Yeah, if you'd like, I'm happy to hit a few highlights of the program and some of the changes, as you mentioned, Brian, if that would be helpful. Sure. So from a marketing perspective, as Brian mentioned, we have our participant engagement program, something that the city of Philadelphia has not previously engaged with because of the third-party data being used with our partners at Merkle. At the beginning of this year, we made a shift to the program and we took all of that data into a proprietary database that is owned and managed and maintained at Nationwide. And so the data concern has now been eliminated. Gives us an opportunity to really turn on this program for the city and allow us to use marketing outreach in a really targeted manner to drive behaviors that we're trying to see. And so whether that's enrollments, increase in contributions, revisiting your allocations, looking at roll-in dollars, stay in plan, those are all examples of campaigns that we run through the marketing program that we would be able to do or elects to approve use of the participant engagement program.
so the roll-in assets, we're 43% increase. This is your data from other.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so what that means is one of the things that we do with the program is we keep a very small subset of participants across all of the plans in a control group. And so that means that for the course of the year, they're not getting the communications that everyone else is. Again, it's very small. We manage that in a, you don't stay in that control group for a long time. But the reason I bring that up is because what it allows us to do is it allows us to know what is the impact that we're having with the communications for the group that is getting the community, is receiving all of the emails and the mailers. And so to answer your question, Brian, that roll-in is a campaign that we do encouraging people to get outside assets. If they have some of those opportunities, meet a retirement specialist, give us a call. And we know through our data that people who are receiving those communications, there's a 43% increase in the number of people who roll in outside dollars when they receive these communications versus those who don't. Yeah, certainly, I'd say it's probably one of our biggest drivers, those roll-in dollars. We also do, and it's harder to quantify, but one of the other really major campaigns that gets run through this program is what we call stay and plan. And so we're looking at people that we think could be likely to leave, whether that's, you know, for a whole myriad of reasons, not necessarily just retirement. And we're targeting them kind of months in advance on all of the benefits, the reasons to stay and plan. I'd say that's one of our other kind of top significance in terms of impact to the plan.
Keeps people in the plan.
Yeah.
457, you can't roll out of the plan once you're retired, correct me if I'm wrong.
Couldn't you, have you got a new job?
Well, you'd be retired.
You know, you could,
I think you were.
Right.
you know, retirement thing, resign is too different.
Well,
Okay.
you wouldn't be a city worker anymore.
Okay.
Sorry, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
so we're looking primarily, I mean, our primary target there is pre-retirees. And so we're saying, hey, as you get to that point of making the decision to retire, we want to make sure we're getting in front of those people to let them know that staying in plan, keeping their assets in the plan is a viable option and putting the education around that.
Can I make a quick comment? One of our retirees that recently left, she said she wished she would have gone sooner. She went like maybe a few weeks before she retired, but she's like, I wish I would have gone a year or so sooner than when she did. Most people, I
I mean,
mean,
education program.
yeah, I don't know what information she obtained, but she's into her cop, I guess she was keeping her money there, but she said the information that she gained, she wished she had done it like a lot sooner. So I don't know if you want to target some of the drop people to say, hey,
Yeah.
now is the time, not just when you're like wrapping up your retirement.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's really that campaign for stay and plan, you know, it starts really several years in advance of when we expect people to really almost once they start, you know, if they make catch-up contributions or kind of around the age 50, 55 is when we start dripping on some of that educational material.
Brad, I assume you communicate that to the folks when you participate in
Yeah.
retirement seminars, right?
Absolutely.
The one thing is, Andre, for exempt employees, there might be a space for people to take on for exempt employees. Because it might be most of the seminars. Well, they can join the seminars, but they don't have captive audience, they can, so that might be something. You heard Brad mention earlier that 858 employees who are in plan 16 and are eligible for a match, but are not participating in 457.
Yep.
383 in similar situation in plan 10. What would the marketing plan do to target those folks now that they've been targeted to
Yeah.
encourage them to start participating in 457 in order to attend that match?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's an opportunity that, you know, again, if we elect to use this program, we could look at those employees, you know, if we can have those flags and the data to know who those employees are. One of the great things about the way this program works is it's what we call kind of always on. And so unlike what you have today, where it's kind of a point in time, hey, we might run a drop, you know, email in August and send it out to everyone. What we're doing as a part of this program is we can build out using a lot of the same material and communications to educate them on, you know, the match opportunity, the need to participate in the 457 plan in order to get that match. And it's not just a one-time event. And what we can know from the data is, let's say we send it out, you know, in the month of August, people don't engage with it. We might take a little bit of a break, but we know they didn't open it. And so we might put them back on in October to remind them again. Maybe they opened it, but they didn't click. If they didn't click, the next time they're gonna get an email that says, hey, you started, but let's finish what you started. And so that's an example of how we can use that data to really get a lot more personalized and targeted. And I think the eligibility for those employees that aren't participating is a really good opportunity for us as we move forward.
You have data on that? I would assume that Nationwide has some level of data that would suggest what percentage of these non-participants do we capture through this, you know?
Oh, in terms of getting people to enroll. Yeah, I would say that's actually been a newer area of focus for us. Over the past year and a half, we really started to do a lot more on that, you know, driving people into the plan and enrollment. We see, and it depends on the recency of the data, but we see anywhere between about 10 to 15% in conversion rate in terms of people who receive the messages and then actually follow through and complete their enrollment. Sometimes that can be lower if you've got a really old, a file with a lot of people that are, 20 years and they've received this message, every year for the past 20 years and haven't taken action, and that's kind of an older set of data. You'll see that drop down. But we do find that regular and recurring touch point helps to keep it somewhere like right around 10%.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And 10% of those would be, another 100 people, give or take.
Any other questions from the board?
So we're going to vote on this today. We do this, program today.
Yeah, it's being recommended for a motion, right?
Yes, I just say that to clear it up, my part, thank you, Brian, can hear me. So when the committee met, Marcia's not here, so, but when we met, we was impressed by this presentation right here. And especially since they took the third-party marketer out of the situation, we felt we didn't have that problem of our members being at risk anymore. So we do agree that this is another form of communication. And, to get to our members and help them, realize with the 457 plan can offer them. So we were in favor, we just wanted them to bring it to the full board. So I didn't understand that this morning, but yeah, so. I do make a motion that we adopt this, product or
Is there a second? Motion to adopt the participant engagement tools was made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, vote to roll. Brian,
I think.
Aubrey,
Approved.
Sherilyn. Approved. Roosevelt,
Approved.
Paul,
Approved.
Andre, approved. Mike.
Approved.
And Carol. Motion carries.
I have one quick question, I'm gonna pass this one. The roll-in assets, which is pretty significant, 43%. You have data on where that ends up in the plan? I mean, I would assume that's probably folks that are on the older end, bring the money into the plan. You know where that money tends to land?
I don't know, off the top of my head, but we could certainly do some analysis around and, we're running. Thank you for the vote of approval, and we can, when we start running those campaigns here, we can take a look at once we're running those, what do we see in terms of those assets and their allocation, where they end up going to.
Do we know where they come from? Are they rolling in other, so you know that? Some going with what Brian said, they're all 30 people.
That's where my head is, I just want to say. Should have been doubting Tom.
Yeah.
Like to see that, see where it ends up.
Yeah, and that's, one of the other points, I don't think I mentioned this, maybe did last month, but one of the things that we'll look forward to doing is, once this is onboarded and rolled out to all of your participants on a quarterly basis, we'll be bringing a report that shows, for each of the campaigns, what we see in terms of age and click through and actions. And so, that's a really great tool that'll help us, get a little bit more diagnostic on where do we need to do more, where is something maybe not working, or where are we having a lot of success and we should replicate. And so that's a good opportunity to take a look at some of that, segmentation and analysis there.
Brian, if it is 43% of folks who own assets, assuming they are over employees, it's going to be more conservative. It's like that.
Those are my other, that's the point of the question. I was,
So if the goal is, as you indicated, to keep people in the plan after they are, we want to make that attractive to them. Especially to the older employees who may not want to take as much risk, because there's a way to do that. I don't think it's too much. But Jeff, this is just going to tell us about a little bit about that now.
Absolutely. One, I want to say thank you for that photo of PEP. I know it's been, probably a 6-year conversation. And just hearing the numbers that Brad shared, roughly about 1,000 participants that are not in Plan 10 or in Plan 16, that are not getting that match. The opportunity to make a difference for those folks is exciting, right? For the city of Philadelphia and those participants, because you've built a great plan. And so that's just exciting opportunity, right, to share this message with more people. With that said, following the process that we've had around our general account discussions. Last week, we had a conversation around where rate was going to go for first quarter of 2024. And it was shared that that rate was going to hold steady at 2.6. I know that's probably news that wasn't as well received across the table here, as I know you're all getting calls from your participants or members, right? Seeing things in the papers around, rising interest rates and all of that. And what I ask is a remembrance of a couple things. One is, as you look at the fixed account here, the duration of the bonds that are held, right? It's give or take right around 10 years in that spot. And so when you look at the time of the investments back, I think it was November 2017, it takes time for those assets to fall off where we can then reinvest. And then additionally, it's been unprecedented times. When you think about rates that have been rising as quickly as they have over the past, let's say, year and a half, 2 years, it's over 5%. As you know, that puts downward pressure on your bonds that you currently hold. So that's some of the challenges that we faced here. In addition, it's understandable participants have looked for other assets outside of this program where they can see shorter term money rates that are higher. And that's understandable, but it also creates a little bit of a catch-22 in the sense that it doesn't allow the new dollars to come in to buy into those new money rates that are out there. And so it creates that little bit of a catch-22. You can't blame the participant for chasing a higher money rate that's out there in a short-term space. But again, when we looked at the data here, this fixed account has actually provided greater value over that time period than if they had been in a short term. So we're hoping, right, in many ways, this will be a glitch or whatnot, a blip, and eventually things will stabilize as far as the overall interest rate market, and we'll be able to get to a spot where we can bring greater value in this space to your participants, which is our goal. We want to create greater value for them. So with that said, the rate for first quarter is declared at 2.6, which is holding steady where we are today.
It'll be a 2.6 through March of 23,
That's correct.
24.
24.
And you're saying that because we got in around 2017, our money's locked up in that environment, we can't get out of that. That's in a nutshell.
Well, the investments were made then, and the average duration is, again, give or take, right around 10 years. I know I don't have the fact sheet in front of me, but I believe that's been shared with Chris and the team as far as the fact sheets that shares the average duration.
The average you got. So problem with that, like, this fund is the $50 billion fund, I think. It's been in place since 1931. Nationwide Life Insurance Company manages it. I don't believe that you have a separate product for Philadelphia. I'm wrong. It's more of a question that there.
Yeah, it's not, as I think Jack explained last week when we were talking, right? It's not.
I just want everyone to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I have talked.
Totally understand. It's not a separate product, but there's accounting for Philadelphia, right? And the assets that came in back in November of 2017 in that investment, which was, it was a large investment, right? I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 million, give or take, but in that space.
Since then, 2017, the general fund, the fixed account, was at 40 million. It's now 50 million. So one of your arguments was that there's more money coming out than coming in, so it's hard to reinvest. But the account's gone up by 25%, $10 million. That doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, so what you're looking at though in Philadelphia cases, and I don't have it right in front of me, I think the number was right around 10 or 11% negative flow. When you look at the numbers here recently, and that's in this rising interest rate environment, right? And so part of those years since we bought, interest rates, right? We weren't having conversations about rising interest rates then because the interest rates on the street were not exceeding what you could get in the general account. What we've seen though is over 5% rise in the last year and a half. And naturally, that's going to cause participants to look at other spots where they can get short-term money rates that are higher. And that's what they've done. It's created this short-term blip, if you will, where we're seeing a negative flow versus assets coming in. Because what would normally happen is, hey, you got new assets coming in on a bi-weekly basis payroll. We're able to take those assets that are allocated towards the fixed account, right, and buy into the higher bond yields or new money rates. And right now that hasn't been the case because the flows coming in are less than the flows going out. And so that's the catch-22, right? I get the frustration. I can see it on your faces. But that's,
You don't know how many calls I get. Numbers, you really don't about this. It's getting embarrassing. We're less than half, and I don't expect this rate to follow the street rate because it benefits us on the downside. I get it. We're not invested in a CD at a bank, a credit union. 2 years later, we're less than half. That's a massive gap. most likely gonna be bigger by the time March of 24 shows up. That's what you seem to think is gonna happen, right? I think we all think we have another, at least one more rate bump, maybe. It's gonna get worse for me. I need to get reelected to this position, and this is making it challenging. And I'm just not seeing the argument. I feel like we've done a lot for Nationwide to help them be productive in Philadelphia. I would imagine with one of your bigger accounts. Are there other funds in the country that have a higher yield than we do? That Nationwide manages?
There are,
Yes or no? I don't need specific.
yes, there are.
And they're invested in the same product that's been around since 1931. All right, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. I have one job to take care of my members.
So are you saying that this rate's locked in until 27 because they're 10-year investments? They can't change as long as those bonds are outstanding?
Well, there's various factors that could go into play, but that's when there would be an opportunity, right? Is that old money expires and hopefully we can reinvest in new money rates at that time, they'll be better. But to that question, I just want to be fair to because I get the calls that you're receiving. You look at it, you go, okay, well, I can get, because I see the market rates too, right? I can go to short-term money
I just
rates,
wanna-
and get 5%.
So Rob's question
If
was
we're
that,
locked in until 27 and rates stay high, why would new members come into this fund?
right,
So that, and the blip you're seeing won't be a blip, that'll be a long-term trend.
So that's part of the catch-22. I don't think any of us though can project where rates are going to be over the next several years. This past week,
A lot of people project the rate to be. Right, and people think they're gonna stay high for a while.
mhm,
so the Fed this past week did actually hold rates steady, so they didn't raise them this past week. So there's that, but the crystal ball, I don't think anyone did project 5% increase over the last year and a half or two. So, I don't have the crystal ball. I wish I did to be able to say this is where it's going to go. That's why I'm not going to speculate on it, but I hear you, and it definitely creates a challenge, and it's a catch-22 for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a serious problem.
so the other question is that you mentioned. If the members start taking their money out because they can get better rates on the street, then where does that leave this fund in total? 50 million is not handy, like if they start drawing down. Because they can get a better interest rate, you want to return for money as well. So I guess what we all say in a nutshell, we need y'all to find a way to make this better. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but we need y'all to find a way to make it better. We need to see the interest rate, even if you're gonna do it in increments, we're not saying come in and give us a whole 3% increase, even if you wanna do it in increments. Then we need for y'all to come and tell us that y'all can make it better. That's the bottom line, what it is, that the members are suffering. Because the interest rates to buying a home, buying a car, getting a loan is going up on us. While our money is self-funding and making everybody else richer, affordable, but it's not doing nothing for us. But we have to pay those interest rates. We go buy a house, we go buy a home, we get a loan, we pay that high rate that the feds come down. But I got money sitting in the bank that's earning less than what I pay in interest rate that doesn't sit well.
And no, I hear you, and those are conversations I can assure you that you're having at the top of the house, and it's across the portfolio. It's that we're looking at these things and how we can, are there decisions that can be made, right, to help in that, but at the same time, we don't want to give up quality. So when you look at the quality of what we're buying in this, right, we don't want to give that up to chase the short-term rate either, because overall the portfolio's job is to provide fixed or steady, asset protection. And so those are things that are happening at the highest level of the house as we're evaluating that. And I hear you. We too want to be able to bring value to your members across the city of Philadelphia. We do. And so, it does, I get the frustration. It shows, and I understand it when you hear, hey, rates are at X out there on the street today, and you're holding, say, 2.6. We're hoping that factors will change and allow us to bring that value that you're asking for.
So forget the street, but the rates are at the street for the same. Brad, can you tell me what the interest rate is if someone takes a loan out for a property?
8.75.
3.7%. It's not on the street, that's nationwide, that's number one. Number two, you talked about the flow,
Like we said,
you talked about the flow 10% down on the flow. That's the exact flow that Bina alluded to earlier, when she sent an email out to folks that are 100% invested in that product in order to do what? Get them out of that product. Something that Nationwide and the board has been working on at least 7 years. I've been here 13 years, so at least 7 years. Remember, years ago, it was over 50%, people close to 60 in the stable value guaranteed fund. There was a concerted effort by Nationwide and the trustees to educate members, especially younger members, as Bina said, to maybe you don't want to sit in that fund, maybe you want to get into something a little more aggressive that'll give you a better return. We're successful with Nationwide's help in doing that. Now we're being penalized for that. That's outrageous. That's number two. Number three is that you're exactly right when you say the strategy behind this product is to provide a stable and consistent return. In fact, that was in a letter you sent to us in 2018. But you know what was right below that letter? Nationwide Life bears the risk associated with the variation in returns. I don't see you bearing that risk. I see you transferring that risk onto the members. So you are taking the market returns and market variations, and the members are bearing the burden of that. And the elected trustees and the administration trustees are bearing the burden of that by hearing the feedback all the time from the members who are being 2.6%. As Carol said, inflation's out there, everything's going up. Some of these members have to take a loan to cover their losses. You're charging them 8.75%. Nationwide is. That's not on the street, that's Nationwide. So I think there's more inequities here than you might realize. And it's a problem. It's a problem.
So you're,
When you say it's being discussed at the highest levels, I was in the meeting last week with maybe your CFO, I don't remember what Jack's exact title is. I was in the meeting with Brian. Seemed to me that Nationwide wasn't even willing to really discuss this issue earnestly. You listened to us. That's all you did. So, we have a long way to go here on this issue. I think, Chair.
no, I can hear the frustration here in the room and I get it. A couple of things I just would like to be clear on. One, you bring up the rate part. That's not a nationwide fee. So that's not 8.75, it's not coming to Nationwide. That's actually, the participant borrows that money, they're paying themselves back with interest. So, and that's set by whatever the loan policy is in the document that the city of Philadelphia has. But with that said, right, that speaks to, it's probably a prime plus factor. So that's set based on the document, that's a prime plus factor here in the city of Philadelphia. But when you overall look at it again, I can tell you these conversations are happening. And, at the office of the CFO, we're overall not Nationwide Financial, but Nationwide overall enterprise. And these conversations, but it's again, where do you go? Because you don't want to give up quality. And you also have to look at overall what the portfolios do. And so instead of carrying your risk, what we're saying is that, hey, this product is guaranteed that you won't lose assets. And that's Nationwide bearing that risk. And so that's what that's speaking to, is the fact that, hey, your principal is protected by Nationwide's claim paying ability. And that's what that speaks to.
I just wanted to add a couple things. One, just for the record, it's 40 and 50 billion. I think you said million.
Oh, did I?
Just,
I'm sorry.
no, I'm just for the record, just for the size of the fund. The second thing is to Rob's question or Rob's point. So we came in this fund in 2017. Jeff, to your point about being able to invest or being locked in, I believe there were just under 4,000 different securities or investments in the fund. The last fact sheet, which I know will probably be updated next week, is somewhere north of 5,000. I think it's actually closer to 6,000. So there have been additional investments and opportunities along the way. And my understanding is the outflows that Nationwide and Jack were talking about are only fairly recent. Along that way from 17 to 18, 19, 20, 21, I don't think we had a lot of discussion about outflows. So during that time, there was a steady inflow, or at least money wasn't being taken out. So there was an opportunity along the way. at least from my perspective and staff's, to pick up at least some yield. I get what you're saying, recently there's been more of a jump. But I just wanted to point that out, to Fran's point, to Rob's, Brian, to Carol's, and I do think these are discussions, whether they're at the table or in subcommittee or offline, on a few of these points that need to continue. But I just wanted to add those,
We owe it to the members. This, it is unacceptable. We have to accept it because you're gonna shove it down our throat. You have that option. Nationwide not being you, Jeff. Nationwide can set the rate. That's in the contract. It's not okay what's happening. Now, I mentioned this last week. I don't care about January 1. I don't need to see 5%. What I need to see is the projected movement on this over the next 6, 9, 12, 18 months. So I can say to my members, what you're saying to me, we're going through a little bit of an anomaly, but we're gonna right the ship. Because that's what they want to hear. I think Nationwide should make money off this plan. That's the goal, right? I'm a capitalist. I think you should make money. We've given you tools, including today's vote, to save more money off of our members. Time to share some of that with our members. It's that simple. I can't be more blunt than that, right? This tool, this PEP tool alone is going to make Nationwide a nice chunk of change. Members need to feel that. That's simple. So that message seems to get back to those higher levels. I think subcommittees in order to dig into this. We owe it to the members. I can't just say it's too sick, deal with it. I can't. So that's where I'm at. I'd like to see that happen.
Maybe some of the folks you're doing to higher up. Really tend that. One thing about safety, I get what you're saying about safety. Everyone at this table understands the trade-off of, reducing risk and safety versus return. However, we as a public pension fund pay almost $1 billion a year in benefits. So we have to be very safe, right? Because we have to ensure we're able to pay the benefits. Our CIO invests a certain portion of our portfolio in cash. Chris, what's that cash? You don't get much safer than cash. Chris, what's cash paying right now?
or 5.5, 5.4,
That's cash.
5.6.
Our members should be penalized for the possible, I'm not saying definite, but the possible investment mistakes that whoever manages your fund made at the expense of safety. Maybe they were too simple. I don't know. We get into that to something.
We're happy to have that conversation and include, members of our finance team. Right, they can definitely get a lot deeper into the weeds, because admittedly, right, the role that I play. I'm happy to answer the questions and whatnot, and take those questions back. But to have the folks that are able to get deeper into the weeds on the general account, its overall portfolio, happy to set that up and people can get that conversation.
People who can make decisions.
So instead of
We all want, a messenger. We want someone who can make decisions.
well, we want you there, but we want somebody else who can make a decision. You can come, but there's somebody who can help.
Understood.
You're welcome. You're here for it.
A lot of people around this table sat in union negotiations, right? You want people there at the table who can make decisions, or otherwise you're gonna be wasting your time, right?
No, I totally understand that, and I can appreciate that for sure. And if Nationwide gives me the ability to make decisions on the $50 billion portfolio, then I would be that person, but they haven't. So for that point, I understand loud and clear.
Once they do that, let us know, we're out. No. Appreciate it, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're the messenger, so that's the only way to communicate with Nationwide, but I am very displeased with Nationwide. I don't want to speak for anyone else to take, I'd like to know more about.
No, I get it. And we do want, just again, from an overall perspective, I wanted to bring greater value, right? Just as you do to your members. And so, my commitment from a relationship management side is to say, hey, let's have those conversations and let me see if I can bring the right people to the table. So they can hear it straight from you as well. And hear those concerns and see where the dialogue takes us. I appreciate that.
Chris will reach out to set up the subcommittee. Brian, I assume, do we want to set the subcommittee now? We want to do that next.
The membership of it, that you're talking, I just want, if you guys want to choose now, that's fine. And who wants to, for maximum, who wants to be on it.
When Brian does what they have to do.
I'd like to,
That is what you want to do. How many people do you
I
want?
think it's important as treasurer. Sorry, no, it's fine.
Okay, you take it. And I'll say she can say it.
Cal, you in, Cal?
No, Brian Louisville will do it, that's.
I might do it without Jackie.
Yeah,
She's good.
She's
pretending that's here.
All people, I'm good.
Okay, Albert.
So the controllers representative get on there, whether it's Andre or Andre plus. Chris will send out an email.
Appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for taking that.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn for comp is made and properly seconded.
Yeah.
With that, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll move to the seconds.
Yeah. I'd like to call the investment committee in session. First item is approval of the August 29th minutes. There are motion.
I'll make that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Second. Second. Thank you. Brian,
I approve.
Aubrey, approve. Carolyn,
Approved.
Roosevelt, approved. Paul, approved. Andrea, approved. Mike, approved. Carol, approved. All right, thank you. Any way you say approved, I just assumed. Carol, so goes on a roll. Okay, I think we are revisiting the asset allocation. Thank you. Before we have to start.
Yeah, good morning, Rob. So yes, this is a continuation from the August discussion on the asset allocation. The board staff asked follow-up questions. Marquette agreed to come back, having a relevant couple of new asset mixes, which you can find on page 4 of the first document. The agenda on 2. Asset allocation study. Marquette, quickly, Brad will go through in more detail. But you'll see in Mix A, which I think will be a lot of time spent on and focus. You'll see there's the big change is that there would be significantly more planned assets dedicated to fixed income. Total of 28%, which is 11% higher than the current IPS target, and about 9% higher than where the portfolio sits today. There'll obviously be a corresponding increase in US and international equities, along with a small drop in core real estate. That would reduce the expected rate of return to 7.44%. It should still be north of the board's assumed rate of return, while dropping volatility considerably.
That's what we asked Marquette to look at.
Correct. And that, and Twiggy and Brett will talk about it further, but that is the mix they're recommending. A couple of things that we have discussed, some of us offline, staff with Marquette, is that with this asset allocation was adopted by the board.
Because it's one other change in the application, and it's also as a request that cash 4%.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it now properly reflects the cash, which is being modeled using about 4.2% expected interest rate over the long term. A couple of things that we've talked about is if this was adopted, how the timing would work, because moving $750 million into fixed income, particularly given the interest rate environment, we want to be sensitive to that so that we didn't get caught, with a hit really quickly. I got a somewhat related question from Andrea and Charles and me from the controller's office, just asking Marquette to talk a little bit about the impact on the portfolio if we did this, and long-term rates continue to go up while shorter-term rates stay constant. Maybe a little bit different than what we're going through now. They'll come back with a more detailed stress test in the post-meeting, but they will talk about it today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brett and Quake here to walk through this asset allocation next time.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. With the asset allocation, I think before we dive into the numbers, it's probably helpful just to give a little context as to where things were from a interest rate or macro environment when we first put the asset allocation together in 2016 and where we are today. So in 2016, we're looking at the post global financial crisis world where a lot of leverage due to low interest rates. Interest rates were basically at zero, so you weren't really getting anything from fixed income. And fixed income moved away from actually being an asset class that gave you a notion of fixed income to something that was really just a ballast and a cushion within the portfolio. So from an asset allocation standpoint, this plan and any plan that's looking at north of 7% really has to have less in fixed income and more in the return-seeking asset classes, because again, fixed income wasn't yielding anything. As we've discussed over the last 18 months or so, we've seen the Fed aggressively raise interest rates. And that aggressive rate hike has led to the Fed funds rate right now being between 5.25% and 5.5%. So a very different interest rate regime today versus when we were at 0%. So what's the opportunity for us in the pension plan? Well, the opportunity is still to have a healthy allocation to the return-seeking portions of the market, being equities and private equity. But it also allows us to increase the allocation to fixed income because fixed income is still yielding something, today, I should say. The challenge, however, and Chris alluded to this, the challenge is the timing. The challenge is the Fed. And there is that saying, don't fight the Fed or don't guess what the Fed's trying to do. It's probably trickier in this environment versus like any other period. As we think about the asset allocation really quickly on Mix A, what we're looking to do here is incorporate a little bit more in fixed income once again. And you'll see from a volatility standpoint or risk standpoint, Mix A is a pretty sizable decrease in volatility. So we go from 10.95 to 8.78. We still maintain a very healthy target rate of return of 7.44.
And that's the net, right?
That is correct. So that is net. It's assuming the beta exposure or the actual asset class exposure. So it is net of fees, correct? And really in moving up the allocation to fixed income, again, the goal is to take a little bit of risk off the table and also just have cushion in the portfolio. The challenge is, however, with interest rates, the market's rallying today, and like we can't make this up. The market's rallying up today because PCE numbers came in. The Fed may not raise interest rates now. Yesterday, they're going to raise interest rates now because PCE is at 3%. As opposed to 4%, the market's now rallying. So that leads us to
2%. So,
exactly.
that 2%.
And that's the challenge. The challenge is the market continues to, it's always been irrational, but even now, so it continues to really just overreact or underreact to things that it should be taking in stride. And the challenge right now with allocating a big amount to fixed income is, okay, what happens if the Fed does get it wrong? What happens if the Fed has to raise interest rates again, or we're back into a corner? So even though we're talking about Mix A and we're recommending Mix A, we'll happily take any questions you have. We're definitely looking at an implementation timeline that's more of a journey. At a minimum, we would look to start discussing the implementation with staff during the first quarter of next year. Anything before that is premature because again, if rates go up and we're phasing into an asset class as rates go up, we're actually losing value. But at the same time, we don't want to miss what could potentially happen, which is a slight interest rate decrease, which would actually be a rally for the fixed income market. And I think, again, going back to a very thoughtful and practical way of implementing this with staff, there's a 10% increase in fixed income. We wouldn't look to move to that 10% overnight. We'd probably look at the midpoint, typically look at the midpoint of any large asset allocation shift, and then look to transition to that endpoint within an acceptable period of time. We're usually looking at 3 to 4 quarters for a big change like that. But the caveat here is it's always subject to market conditions, and it's always subject to, again, what Fed policy may be.
And logistically, do you think that's actually possible to move that quickly? I mean, aside from whether, from the portfolio perspective, we want to do it, do you think we actually could do that?
So 5%, the quick answer is yes, sort of 5% to the midpoint, because plus minus 5% in ranges always keeps us within the policy. So as we think about the portfolio, we have the benefit of receiving cash. So cash contributions that come in, that's an opportunity to redeploy some of those cash assets coming in, should the interest rate environment be settled into fixed income. So that's one example. We have money coming in.
Sorry, so it's not redeploying current investments, but taking the cash as a way to increase.
That's one example.
Yeah.
That's one example. And it also just furthers the case for this doesn't have to happen. If this is approved at this meeting, the clock isn't ticking for us to move to Mix A. In fact, if this is approved at this meeting, the goal would be to have a rebalancing timeline structured during the first quarter of next year. And as part of that rebalancing timeline, we would want to incorporate any new monies coming in. as opposed to, perhaps selling out at the wrong time and then buying in at the wrong time. The other thing is the redemption, that we're receiving from, UBS. As an example, we do reduce, how much we have in core, fixed income, from a target standpoint. So that would also allow us to redeploy some of those monies coming in into fixed income. So because there are quite a few moving pieces, even though the reason and the rationale is very simple in terms of taking risk off the table, we want to make sure that we're very mindful of the challenges, the interest rate environment today, as opposed to.
We don't take risk off in a risky way.
That's exactly it. So it's going to be very deliberate. It won't be, again, a case of getting a new allocation approved and then in a month, the money moving over. It would be a case of the new allocation getting approved. And then as we do with stuff, regular updates on, what a rebalancing may look like, where the money would come from. And then again, with seeds of new money, where we look to redeploy that. So it's going to be very deliberate, very thoughtful, and very mindful, because again, any type of transition that you make, we're not market timers. We never look to time the market, but at the same time, the market can give you enough clues more often than not in terms of what the right informed decision would be at a particular point in time. And right now, again, the market's decided this morning that it's going to rally because PCE is not as high, but probably by Monday, the market will realize that Fed still probably is committed to raising it.
Go back to 330 today.
So by that point, again, there'll be a clearer sense going into 2024, whether the futures market is correct in terms of, okay, a potential rate hike between now and the end of the year, but then 2024 could be where we see rates coming down. The challenge there is not the time rates coming down, and it goes back to the building blocks we have in the portfolio. If rates were to come down, that would be because of a recessionary environment, soft landing.
Probably not including coming out to where they were before, right? So,
So no, that's not the expectation. If that does, and we can't rule anything, put anything off the table. So that's the challenging thing. We're not expecting to go back to zero, but at the same time, we didn't expect trillions of stimulus to be viewed as transitory by the Fed, and then raising interest rates on a lagging indicator, and then looking at indicators such as unemployment's going up, job openings shrinking, PCE is going down a little bit, and then the government shutdown, that's estimated to take 40 basis points away from GDP. You add all of that in, there's it's my magic word, but there's a probability that the Fed may overshoot in terms of raising interest rates, and we may end up having a slowdown that's more detrimental than planned. If that is the case, that could be a scenario where rates go down significantly lower, perhaps not to zero again, to save face and have some credibility, but rates could come down again pretty meaningfully. And that's another reason why it does make sense to kind of lag in, phase in from an implementation standpoint.
Given that scenario, you're fairly optimistic over 10 years for fixed income.
Yes, based off everything now, based off the fact that right now the projection is for a slowdown, even if there is a soft landing or harder landing, there isn't a projection for another global financial crisis or something to the tune of lowering interest rates for the next decade plus. It seems that we moved away from that, particularly as inflation is at the front and center of not only the Fed, but central banks across the globe. So the expectation is, even if rates do come down, we don't expect zero or even negative rates like we've been, used to post-financial crisis.
Given the 11% increase in the fixed income,
Yes.
if you are gradually moving into the fixed income, let's say a couple of years down the road, maybe the thesis doesn't seem to be playing out, then what's the plan?
So there are a couple of things that also work with the move into fixed income. So if subject to this board's approval, in the next couple of years, we should continue to see the discount rate going down by 5 basis points as well in each of those calendar years or fiscal years. So as that happens, it kind of lessens the pressure on fixed income, and it kind of brings fixed income back into the role of keep the steady base or income stream in the portfolio. And the other asset classes, the equities and so on, would be expected to carry more of the weight, which they have typically when rates have gone down. If there is a seismic shift, and let's say, for example, we've all gotten it wrong with the Fed, we would have to come back to the table and not start from scratch, because the nice thing about the building blocks we have, they're very simple, very transparent. It might be in a case of, okay, we're just going to remain underweight relative to target on fixed income as we navigate through this new interest rate environment. But we're not, handcuffing ourselves to be in an asset class. If things change fundamentally and unexpectedly, we're not handcuffing ourselves in the asset allocation to be anchored down by fixed income. So hopefully the discount rate coming down and then the flexibility to always revisit where things are as we're rebalancing just gives us some guardrails with respect to the direction we're going in terms of de-risking. Thanks.
So, I'm just a little uncomfortable with putting 11% in the core bonds. We just had this big discussion on putting our money into account in 2017, and now we stopped.
Yes.
So I don't know why, I mean, that's just a lot for me. Yes, we're putting that much more into core bonds, and then I know you say everything's transparent and we have control, but as we just told today, we really don't have control, because once the market change, if we stuck in bonds, we stuck in bonds. So, I mean, I would just like to see it not as much as 11%, and I'd probably like to see a little bit more in cash. But I'm just uncomfortable with that amount being put into core bonds and we being stuck there.
Yeah.
If they do change and stuff like that, then, we can't get out of it. We stuck there. It's gonna take a minute to move it. And
So one.
that's just a lot. That's like doubling what we are right now. That's doubling the allocation to core bonds right now.
Would we doing away if we weren't locked in, or is there?
Yeah, so this is going to be a little different. So hopefully this explanation helps a little bit. So the discussion we just had on the guaranteed income fund, that's a stable value product, and the stable value product is structured where it's intermediate fixed income, and then you have insurance contracts that basically guarantee the value of that stable value portfolio, so it remains at a stable NAV or net asset value. Because of how stable value is structured, when rates go down, stable value is going to do tremendously well. But when rates go up, stable value is going to, you're going to have to mark to market a lot of the losses. And that mark to market leads to a liquidity value up in the stable value. This fixed income that we're investing in is liquid, so there isn't a lockup in terms of, waiting to get our money back or, having a long execute. This is something we can get in and out of very easily in a matter of days versus what we just discussed for stable value. But in hearing the concern about 11% to fixed income is a very big shift. Absolutely, it is a material shift. And one of the things we can definitely look to do and bring back to you, and this would be part of the transition plan we spoke about with staff, it would be moving to a midpoint. So instead of 11% and 10% straight off the bat, we look at a midpoint allocation, so maybe 5% in terms of the initial transition to fixed income. And then once we're at that 5%, really gauging whether the interest rate environment has moved according to the forecasts and projections, and we can still continue to move forward, or if we kind of pause at that 5% mark. So we wouldn't move to 11% or 10% immediately, but we would look at a midpoint allocation. And Ms. Carroll, to your point, as we're underweight, perhaps cash or other areas of the portfolio, we hold slight overweights there as we're kind of figuring out the transition to the improved asset allocation.
What would the timing if we get to go 5% and then check? Is that in a year, 2 years?
5% would really be a year. 3 to 4 quarters seems very reasonable for a 5% move. A 10% move would take longer, but 5% is very reasonable to expect up to 12 months.
Does that make sense to you, Carol?
But it's the whole process, right? So that means selecting bond managers, right? Doing the interview process, going through all that, and you're saying that could be done within 2 years?
So right now, I'd say high level, we might have for the fixed income managers we need, we might not have to add to the current roster. But part of the discussion with staff and the board would be, okay, is it too much for the existing managers or do we want to expand the pool that we have? So that's the next step after the allocation has been approved. Particularly as we think about what 5% means. And then if we have overweights in cash and so on. So those are scenarios that we would definitely look to discuss. And that would be part of the implementation strategy. We roll out between, whenever this is approved and then the end of the first quarter of next year.
It's why, it looks like mix B gives you slightly better returns because of the margin barrier, so that's almost irrelevant. Less volatility, because volatility is expensive for us. Why are we not considering it? I don't understand. Well, A to B, I don't need the whole glass, if we did a nice job with A. Why wouldn't we, essentially taking it from public equities and private equity, fixed income, more aggressively than we even discussed?
Yeah.
Why not?
So, and I'll put it to Brett and I'm going to just walk through private equity and the modeling of private equity within an asset allocation. So you are correct from a modeling standpoint. We increase our expected return, we decrease our volatility. The challenge in increasing private equity is not just looking at volatility alone. So when we think about private equity, there's other risks. They call it idiosyncratic risk, liquidity risk, key person risk, it could be deal risk, interest rate risk, and so on. Those are other risks that you essentially weigh in during the underwriting process. And it's one reason why when when Brett and Haley and his team bring forward the private equity manager to you, the process is a little different to what we go through when we go through a traditional equity manager, because they want to highlight the team, how they source deals and things like that. So there's extra emphasis in terms of not looking at volatility. But with that being said, Brett, should I kick it to you to walk through what I'm trying to explain?
Yeah. With that, for the point, we deploy 150 million a year to really kind of minimize the risk that Craig you stated by saying that one of the challenges with private equity is the volatility that they state is very volatile. What I mean by that is when you're modeling this out and you're collecting the data is you're getting a lot of the performance numbers via FOIA on a quarterly basis from the underlying plans themselves. And hypothetically, only 10 or 15 plans may report on a quarterly basis. So the variables that are kind of there is who's reporting and what kind of funds are they reporting on. And what our models do is we try to capture not only that data, but then we try to look at about 20 to 25 different variables, such as interest rates, spreads, and unemployment. So our volatility is better at capturing really the 10-year number versus the quarter-to-quarter changes in volatility. But what you see over time is that data gets smoother, cleaner, and less noise over a 10-year period versus over a 1, 2, and 3-year period. Hypothetically, looking at, if I was going to model the volatility of 2021 or 2020 vintage private equity funds, it would look very messy versus if I look at 2015 vintage funds and use that information, it's a much smoother return and gives better characteristics of the market. And that's what, when the challenges of taking a look at this volatility information and trying to find a midpoint or trying to find what's reasonable in that data and information, which comes through then as the asset allocation study.
So it's essentially understated because private equity is not valued on a daily basis. It's going to be understated relative to equities because if equities move on a daily basis, that's going to be more observations when you're calculating your standard deviation. When your private equity only moves on a quarterly lag basis, that's less movement. So the movement, the standard deviation is going to look lower, but the reality is it's not less risky.
So there's there's non-quantifiable volatility model can be captured, but it's
Correct. Thank you. That's exactly it. So it's non-quantifiable. And just as an example, while the volatility goes down, you could expect fees to go up tremendously, as an example. And that's the balance between the volatility being lower and then increasing the private equity allocation.
Even though it's not quantifiable,
Yes.
there has to be some way for you to make that assessment. And you're sort of talking about, and obviously you've been able to follow all of that. how do we know then, how do you know that there's enough variation to say, so A versus B? And what you're seeing from those non-quantifiable facts that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about looking at A versus B, the difference in fees that we would be paying would, for example, be in the tens of millions. For that, that 2% differential. That's an example of, okay, we lose volatility a little bit, but then we're paying significantly more out. When we think about.
And the fees are basically a lock, whereas the returns are not.
Correct. That is correct.
Yes, you're gonna be taking the money primarily either from cash or from equities, and primarily from your lowest fee equities, the loan lines, the index funds in the world. So that's gonna magnify the fee increase even more. You're gonna go from a 1 or 2 basis point asset class to say, 1.5 and 15 or something, so that it's gonna even magnify the fee increase more than if you came from hedge funds or something else to begin with.
Which is okay if you know you're getting returns that will outweigh that, but it sounds like you don't.
Well, not only do you not know, then you have to, some of the other risks, and I think you were kind of alluding to them, either have to have more partnerships because you're going to be putting, instead of 100 to 150 million every year, let's say you're going to do 200 to 225 million. So you either have to be comfortable writing larger checks than the 25 to 50 million of what was norm used to. Or if you don't want to write larger checks, then you have to have more partnerships. If you have more partnerships, at least in my opinion, it gets harder to get it right for more managers, right? I mean, if you're really confident in 2 or 3 or 4 private equity managers, based on track record, now you're having to go to 4, 5, 6, 7. In my estimation, that makes it a little more difficult.
So Mike,
So it's the 12% or 13.5% that we currently have, is that the sweet spot for private equity? I mean, the 17% is not because of the additional 3.5%. What is the sweet spot?
I'd say where we're at right now is the sweet spot. The 12.3 that we have, part of that is driven by what's called the denominator effect. So as we think about the market returns in 2022 and then how the market's performed in 2023, it's not that we've been over allocating to private equity. In fact, it's a reflecting that private equity has held its own value as other parts of the market have sold off. So that's led to us having a little bit more of an overweight presently. As things do correct and the equity markets essentially normalize and the fixed income market normalizes, we would expect going back to that target rate of 10-ish to 12-ish% to be that sweet spot for us. And really, as we think about the sweet spot, again, this plan is in a really good position when we think about other municipal plans where it's again subject to approval, but it's built in where you guys get cash, and then it's also built in where the discount rate comes down. And as that continues to work in your favor, it also allows private equity to have a little bit more breathing room, and it allows other segments of the market. We increase private credit a little bit, and that's an example of still liking the private markets, but recognizing that we don't have to have the private markets work as hard for us. So 12% would be that sweet spot. The denominator effect has definitely increased our overall allocation, but as the markets normalize, we would expect to be in the low double digits in private equity going forward. And then 5 years from now, depending on where the discount rate is and the market environment and so on, we could revisit that overall number, but right now that makes a lot of sense for us.
The fees is good. This board gets the fee issue. Before we got out of hedge funds years ago, it was less than 10% of our portfolio, like roughly 50% of fees. And that's the treble effect.
Yes.
That expensive investment, but it was out here.
fees are down to $10.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Yes.
That Chris, I mean, Chris has stressed that, even in the recent prep meetings that we've had, so it's a good steward, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to the board, it's obviously important to the staff, it's important to the public and people council, other people who oversee it. It's a question we always get. But it's just something to be mindful of if you were to consider massively consider private equity. Yeah, you could make a lot more money as you're suggesting, but we do have to be cognizant that the fees are definitely. And it's,
And the nice thing is, as this board has been gradually lowering the storm rate of return, it allows us to have less volatility and take off less risk as still making the storm rate meet or surpass. I know you don't like to surpass it too much, but you need to surpass the storm rate. Without a doubt.
We didn't.
Basically, I really think after watching what I say that it's.
You think he would have. Like 7 years.
Any other questions about this allocation?
Would it help, I mean, we'll put the schedule you're talking about together with Marquette. Would you like to see, to your question, kind of what in between, just looks like, yeah, we can send it before the next meeting.
So we'll do it to 5% on fixed income, so we see it as a midpoint, a 5% increase to fixed income as a midpoint. So the goal would be to have, we'll keep mix A, and if it's the pleasure of the board, mix B, for now, we can shelve that, and we'll have a new mix B that will just have, instead of 21% in core bonds, it'll be, it would say 18% in core bonds, 17% core bonds, and we'll look to model that.
And where will the makeup be for being lower in bonds? What will be higher in, so it makes A prime as
Yes.
lower core bonds, something else that's gonna be higher.
Yeah, so equities would end up being higher. If we look at really quickly from the current IPS targets and then mix A, we bring down overall equity allocations. So equities, both US and non-US, would go up a little bit.
Makes sense.
More in US equities.
Okay. Good. Questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really helpful. And that takes us to the August investment performance.
I have received the estimated fiscal year numbers for date earlier this week. You'll get fiscal year to date numbers through the end of the month on Monday, so numbers will come out early this week than normal. Obviously, the markets, as Clayton alluded to, August and September haven't been great months for the market, down a little over 3% fiscal year to date estimated. A lot of different things, at least in the short term, weighing on the market, the likelihood of government shutdown. As Clayton said, there's a lot of different conflicting data going on right now. Inflation, consumer spending and sentiment. There's been a lot of arguments, been reading about how much the consumer still has left in savings. Some people think it's very, very little based on their models. Other models have it much, much higher. That's going to drastically change what we think the value of certain actives are. If you think the consumer has a lot of money left or little. We also have obviously you alluded to the government shutdown, leaving money from GDP. We obviously still have the UAW strike, which I had read is possibly set to expand today. That will have some impact, obviously, on GDP potentially. And then on interest rates, another thing I think that's causing issues is that in the housing market, folks, even if they need to or want to move, aren't doing it because they don't want to give up their 3 or 4% mortgage or an 8% mortgage. So that has really contracted the housing market. It's obviously going to slow down the construction and really consumer spending. I think even the Fed has acknowledged that that's an issue. So all of that is combining, at least in the short term, to make for a very challenging market environment. The plan, the managers have held up, very well, by and large, no actionable concerns. I did get a couple questions about Brandywine, who still, they performed very well over the medium to long term. They had a tough month. Simple answer for that is the US dollar strengthened against just about every other currency in the world. So if you're trading just about anything else, you were going to get it because the dollar is moved
And just to remind us again, your benchmark.
Well, and their benchmark, as we've discussed, it's the best benchmark available, but it's still not a perfect benchmark. So that also means in good times, it's gonna look like they outperformed a lot really ahead. In bad times, it's gonna magnify it slightly. But, you know, again, basically any major currency besides the US for the most part, is kind of not that obviously affects that. We will have updated real estate numbers next month with Clarion and UBS, as well as an update on any additional redemption proceeds for that manager. But again, by and large, these would have the fund is held up. With everyone's back.
Any questions? Staff report.
Securities lending, 166,000 year to date, month to date, 1.2 million in 2023. And 53.1 million since the board began the program. Local and diverse AUM, just under 62% combined. And the community managers broken out into their own group, 56 and 30%, and then Philly and surrounding counties. And then just on the upcoming board meetings, we're scheduled for the 26th of October. The calendar to be determined by the board for November and or December, and then January 25th.
Of course, we usually combine them, we're done in December. December 7th is the first Thursday in December, but we will go with that date.
We'll take.
December.
Historic day.
Can we discuss it next month? What are you talking
What?
Whatever you want. Thanks.
about? Yeah, that's very talking about my schedule. It's worse. You see that? That's right. I'm completely. Is there another date you guys think the 7th?
How did you say that's Thursday? December 14th is the following Thursday.
Yes, the later we go on the party.
No, I want to go later in the month, just.
I think we need to have to Canada.
Yeah, I agree, they make a question. That's the university.
Any new business for residents, any old business? And there's the room, probably second, we adjourn this meeting, we are adjourned. Going to the full board. The new probably second, we adopt the anti-stick investment committee. I will call the roles. Brian. Audrey. Approved. Carolyn.
Approved.
Isabel. Approved. Paul. Approved. Red. I. Carol. And motion carried. Any new business for the report, old business? It has been brought to the adjourned, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Just felt to be.